Right, welcome viewers to another edition of iTalks, and it's the new month of February 2021. We're heading on. My name is Bernard Asun, and I'm privileged to be joined in the studios by Imam Sayed Zafar Abbas for us to delve into the current state of affairs. So I would like to welcome to the iTalk studio Imam Sayed Zafar Abbas. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Good to
Great
see
stuff.
you.
Great stuff. Nice to see you. I mean, you're a very hard man to find, and um, you know, get you at a very opportune moment, and I'm gonna, you know, be very grateful. I mean, obviously, for such an incredible personality like you to come on our show to help us talk about some of the issues that confront us in our society. But by the way, I mean, let's how you doing? How
I'm
you?
I'm very well, thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be on the program. You know, in these times, I think it's very important that we try and build the connections as much as we can. You know, because we are really getting to that point where it's very difficult to just be at home the whole time and not have that human interaction. So I think things like these are really, really important to try and give us some kind of normality, you know, in our lives.
That's right. That's right. And then I presume that it's all been okay, going well for you. I mean, there's been several issues that have popped up,
Yes.
and we'll try and then digest them, little by bits. But then,
Hmm.
you know, we are currently the leading country in the world in terms of vaccination, and then we've done quite tremendously really well. I think the figures show that we've managed to um, vaccinate about 22% of the population at the moment in terms of adults, and we've also got almost about 400 million doses of vaccinations being ordered in stock for us. Does that make us greedy?
Uh, I think that after the way that, you know, this whole probably like last, say, about 12 months that the government has, you know, really um, messed us up, you know, if you like, you know, one issue after another after another. At one point, we were the leading country in terms of deaths and cases. So I guess that maybe that's a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel that, you know, we finally got the vaccine and that they're gone at a really good pace, you know, in only just obviously they started giving out the vaccines at the beginning of the year. We're only in, you know, the first week of February, so like 5 weeks into the new year, and, you know, like you said, about 22% of the population has been vaccinated. So I think that's a little bit of good news in what has been a really, really difficult 12 months. You know, 2020 was, I guess, difficult for everyone, more for some people than others. So I think that that is a really good sign that we finally the government is taking this pandemic seriously, and they, you know, wanting to get people to try and get back to some kind of normality. I don't think I would say it's greedy. I think that
But
I think
because obviously,
yes,
if you look at the numbers across the globe, and
yes,
we're not even going to Africa because the virus hasn't hit Africa that hard for them to really cry for the vaccine, even though it's very important that the everybody or every country gets some form of
hmm,
stock for vaccination purposes, and if you come to Europe as well, Britain being the leading country, getting 400 already in stock. I mean,
yeah. No, I think that definitely it is something that our particularly the developed world needs to look into to help out those countries who are obviously financially not as well off, you know, who are dependent on other countries for aid. But also it's equally as important because in UK particularly, I think, because UK has a very large number of elderly population, you know. So for example, if we look at the countries like you referred to Africa, and if you look at, for example, even in Asia, you know, in South Asia, in East Asia, a lot of the population is very young. So yes, they still, obviously people still need it. I'm not saying that they don't, but obviously elderly, and you know, like the priority list is going in UK, you know, they started off with over 80s and over 70, then over 60. So you know, and they are the most high risk category. You know, obviously the elderly and those who are with existing conditions. So I think that it is important that at least those elderly and those who are at high risk do get you know, vaccinated, because most of the time they're getting affected not because of themselves. Most of them are at home, they're not going anywhere, they were not going anywhere before anyway, but other people are bringing it to them. So they need to really be protected the most, you know, because they're the most vulnerable, and through no fault of their own, they're going to get affected by other people who
Right.
are bringing the virus there. You know, if somebody's going out and they're bringing it to them. So I think that that's really important. Also, the other thing that, again, is something that, like you said, in Africa, as in here, also in Asia, the effect hasn't been so much. You know, it obviously is there, but it hasn't been affected. I think one of the contributing factors is that, you know, the immune system of people who live in that part of the world is much stronger compared to immune system of people who are living in the developed world. You know, because in the developing world, they still need their immune systems to be strong. There's lots of different threats to their immune system generally, you know, and in the developed world, our immune system stops being so strong because we don't have those threats around us. You know, all those illnesses that are still common, for example, in parts of the developing world, are not so common here anymore. So therefore, our immune system doesn't know how to fight them. Which is why, you know, usually if somebody from the West goes to Africa, you know, parts of Africa, or they go to Asia, or they go to different parts of the world, they get sick because their immune system cannot cope. So I think that that's certainly a factor as well that's helped, you know, in this case has helped developing world, that they have not been affected so badly. Unfortunately, obviously, they still have been affected, and due to poverty in many areas, they've been affected much worse. You know, we still, I think, are much luckier in UK, where, you know, for example, we have the ability, you know, we have the privilege, if you like, to be able to stay home, to have the government, you know, take care of jobs, of businesses. You know, so much funding has been put in to people who can't work, or people can work from home, or businesses, for example, have been affected, have been given grants by the government. But obviously, in other parts of the world, this is not, it's not possible. So we're still very, very fortunate, and we're very privileged, I think.
Do you think in the whole inception of the outbreak, were we actually prepared? Do you think we were really prepared for it?
You know, it's really, really interesting, because in 2019, so just literally maybe about 7-8 months before the virus was discovered, you know, it was obviously discovered at end of 2019 in China. They discovered the virus, as well as called
Somewhere in November 11,
November, something like that. So probably
2019.
like 6 months before that, you know, in
Right.
March 2019, they had a survey, or they did a study that said that UK is prepared for any pandemic that's coming.
That's right.
Right. So certainly they thought that they were prepared. However, I think that obviously we have the benefit of hindsight now, but at the same time, I think that it's very important that we look at the time, January 2020, February 2020, and even early March 2020, where the government was really not taking this seriously. So maybe they were prepared in the sense that if they knew what to do if something like this came, but they didn't act on it in time. Obviously, as we know, we have a saying in English, a stitch in time saves nine, right? So you have to act in, it's not just about acting, you have to act in time as well. So, really in January 2020, I was just looking back through some of my notes that in 31st January 2020 was the first case of coronavirus that was discovered in UK. That's really early, right? Because obviously, in November, like you say, in November 2019, it was discovered in China. By January 2020, the Wuhan state was totally in lockdown.
That's right.
Right. And, when we say lockdown in China, it wasn't like lockdown on UK. Lockdown meant you couldn't leave the house. I still remember, I very, very distinctly remember that it was a Friday. I was going to do the Friday prayers, and I was at Birmingham New Street Station, and they had the BBC News on the big screen, and that was the big breaking news that China, Wuhan is under lockdown, and the only people that literally are allowed out of the house are the delivery guys, so they can deliver food to you, and nobody else is allowed out. And I thought at that time, I still remember that at that time, January 2020, I thought to myself that, this has happened in China. Of course, there's been epidemics before. We had swine flu, we had bird flu, we had SARS, MERS, all these kinds of epidemics, AIDS, which is a big one. But it didn't go to this extent, right? It developed in one country, two countries, and then they handled it. They managed to, bring the cases down, and it didn't affect us. Of course, this is totally different virus. Nobody knew about it, how severe it could be, how it's going to be transmitted, so on and so forth. But at the same time, I think that 31st January 2020, when they discovered the first case, February, the whole month of February, the government gave the message, consistently gave the message that it's nothing to worry about. There's no need to worry. There's no need to panic. There's no need to do anything differently. Okay. And even in March, when it was realized how severe this virus is, they still took far too long to act. Now we know now, obviously, that the government was not keen from the beginning to do lockdown, right? They did not want to do lockdown. They were against the idea of locking down the country. Of course, it brings a lot of pressure on the government. There's a lot of things the government needs to do because of being in lockdown. And so they didn't want to do lockdown. But even until early, in fact, middle of March 2020, the government was still acting in such a way that, there's nothing wrong. I still remember, I think it was like the first week of March, where the Prime Minister said, there's nothing to worry about. I went to hospital, I shook hands with people who had coronavirus, and there's nothing wrong. There's no problem. And then, of course, a few weeks after that, Prime Minister himself developed the symptoms, and we realized that he also had got.
But certainly, with the delay, as you say, certainly we paid the price for it.
Absolutely.
That's why we've had
no doubt that delay. It went to the last week of March when lockdown finally came. So that every single day is crucial in the spread of these things like this. And I think the greatest thing that we now realized after a whole year of living with this is that people who are asymptomatic, they themselves have no symptoms of this virus. They can pass it on to 10 other people. And that's really the most dangerous thing about this thing, because if somebody's got symptoms, when they said, for example, at the beginning that the same amount of people die of the flu every year, okay, which is true. But the point is that if somebody's got the flu, in most cases, that person is not going to leave their house. They're going to be home. And number two, if that person has got the flu, he's going to have, or she is going to have the symptoms that I will know that I don't need to go, I shouldn't go next to this person because this person has got those symptoms, right? Whereas if there's a person who seems to be fine, he or she has no symptoms, and I come in contact with that person, and whosoever comes in contact with that person passes it on, that person has passed it on without having any symptoms. So I couldn't know in any way that this person has got symptoms, and then that could threaten me or could threaten worse, threaten somebody else's life. So whether it's the old people, whether it's the vulnerable, the ones who already have got pre-existing conditions, all of these things are makes this really, really dangerous.
That's right.
So that was one mistake. Then the second mistake, I think, and which government has now realized, and they acknowledged it, and they've said that, when they were asking them, when is this current lockdown, this lockdown 3.0 that we're in right now, is it going to end? They said, we don't want to rush it because in the first lockdown, what did they do? In the first lockdown, the beginning of July, they said, okay, the cases have gone down, the deaths have gone down. So now we're going to relax lockdown and people can go out, intermingle. And then they opened the restaurants, they opened the pubs, they opened, social gatherings, people were meeting, so on and so forth. And then they put they put the offers for the restaurants, go eat out to help out and so on and so forth. And that led to lots of queues, the shops opening, lots of queues, lots of people interacting with each other. And then the rate went back up again. When we came to winter, again, the rate was up again. So now at least they have learned from that mistake. And they said this time that we don't want to rush opening it up again, because if we rush and it leads to the cases going back up again, then we're going to be
have
back.
to go lockdown again.
Exactly, we're going to be back in.
But then, I mean, let's look into this.
Yeah.
What is better? Is it, say, announcing that we're going on lockdown for a particular period, like making it known to people that we're going in lockdown for 3 months continuous?
Yes.
So that people's minds are at ease because they know that it's going to be 3 months because it's been announced. Is it better that way, or than to say we're going on lockdown, but there isn't any end kind
Right.
of
Of course. Yeah, I know.
Which one is better? Because I feel like, you set the target, let everybody be aware.
Yes.
And then if all things work good in terms of the fight, then we can bring the thing back because it's to our favor.
Absolutely. So I think that, yes, so this time the government, they did the right thing. So they said, for example, that they made the announcement that, it's not going to be before the 8th of March, right? Okay. So like you said, if it's before that, then it's going to be good, because originally the target they gave was that they want to make sure that all of the people over 50 years of age and those people who have got pre-existing conditions have been vaccinated, right? Of course, even after vaccination, we know, and they said that clearly, that even after vaccination, you still need to do the distancing, you still need to wash the hands, still need to do all the precautions that are already there, right? The vaccine will make it less likely that you get it, but there's no guarantee that you will definitely not get the virus, Even after getting the vaccine, it's still possible that person, unfortunately, may develop the symptoms. Of course, it could have been worse if they didn't have it, but nevertheless, they still can get it. So I agree with you. I think it still is important that there should be a target. There should be a roadmap that this is what, this is how long it's going to be. Okay. But I think it's good that they have also said that don't think that this is the day that's definitely going to end, because things might change. As we saw, that things have changed. New variants got discovered, variant in UK, then a variant in Nigeria, a variant in South Africa, a variant, in Germany.
So,
all these different variants have been discovered, right?
yeah.
So that definitely brings, things into play, and it basically creates a situation where it's a different variable, right?
That's right. Let's look at this while you talked about the population that has been vaccinated, and quite significantly, it's come to the notice from statistics that a lot of individuals from the Black, Asian minority ethnicity are refusing to be vaccinated. Now, as a head of one of the communities in Birmingham, and what is your stand on these levels of refusal from these communities? And what would you have to say about it?
Right. So I would like to request, obviously it's a voluntary program. You know, the government has not made it mandatory for anyone to get the vaccine. It's voluntary. However, as you said, and as we all know, all the statistics are there, that black and minority ethnic communities have been affected disproportionately by this virus.
So,
Okay, there are other factors as well why that's the case, but definitely black and ethnic minorities have been affected disproportionately, even despite those other factors. So I would request humbly all those people who are watching your program, and whosoever hears this, this program, that please, 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 please get vaccinated. You know, please don't um, read these, conspiracy theories that go around on the messages on social media. Please make yourself aware. From a religious point of view, I can say that there's nothing in these vaccines which have been administered in UK that is haram. That's not allowed from a religious point of view. There's no 5G in these vaccines. There's no, chips in these vaccines. It can't alter your DNA. None of these things are things which, these are all, conspiracy theories, myths that have been
while
made from.
while while you're looking at this,
Yes.
why do you think there is such, you know, the animosities in the approach for these communities to get vaccinated? Why is there such? Why
I
has
mean,
it become?
yeah, yeah, it's very important question. So we have like, if I speak about my Birmingham community, we have a few people who are very vocal, and they uh, send these messages and they promote these ideas and so on and so forth. There, it's interesting. It's really interesting because they're the same people who, at the beginning of this pandemic, they used to say that this whole pandemic is a conspiracy. You know, this coronavirus, COVID-19, doesn't exist. It's only to control people, so on and so forth. There's no reality to this. These are the same people. Now, when it comes to vaccine, now they're saying that don't get the vaccine because the vaccine has X, Y, Z, in it, and even if you have the vaccine, you can still get it, and so it's not. There's no point of getting the vaccine, so on and so forth. So I think that's one of the reasons. One of the reasons that some of the reasons that people have mentioned or given, they're genuine. One of the reasons, for example, a lot of people say, how is it possible that they were able to develop a vaccine so fast, so quick? Okay, that's a genuine concern that some people might have. And there's a response to that, a reply to that. Usually the reason why vaccines or any kind of pharmaceuticals take lots of time is because they have to get approved by the governments. So it takes time, to go through all those hoops. Right now, all the governments already approved the vaccine before it even came out. They said that as long as it goes through these safety trials, we're going to approve it definitely 100%. So that's why they were able to develop and make it available to administer so quick, right? And of course, if you got any concerns, any kind of concerns, I would humbly request all of your listeners, all our viewers, everybody who's watching, wherever they are, to really speak to your general practitioner, to speak to your doctor, right? Because this is the person that we trust whenever we get sick, right? Whenever I'm sick, who do I go to? I go to my GP. I go to my doctor. And I trust whatever he or she tells me is good for me, right? So it should be no different. There's no difference in this compared to anything else. If I'm sick in any other way, I'm gonna go to my GP. I'm gonna ask them. I'm gonna trust whatever medicine you take. I don't ask that GP at that time, this medicine that you're giving me, is this gonna do X, Y, and Z to me? No. Obviously, I trust my GP. I trust that he or she is going to give me the right medical advice and the right medicine. So similarly, in this case, all the health practitioners all around all over the country, and in fact all over the world, they're all saying that when you're offered the vaccine, please get the vaccine, right? Because that is the best way to protect yourself from this pandemic, right? So I think that that's very, very important. I think it's very, very important, especially for Black and ethnic minority communities, but for everyone, to get, whenever you're offered the vaccine, to please get the vaccine, to protect yourself. And it's not just about yourself. It's about protecting all the other people around you. The reason why we wear a mask is not because of me. The reason why we wear a mask is to protect other people. The reason why we're washing our hands is to protect other people. The reason why we're asked to keep 2 meters distance is to protect other people. One of the things that this pandemic and everything that's brought has taught us, I think, or should have taught us, or I think that has reminded me, which is something that's part of our faith, but it's something that's very lacking in our society. And that is thinking about other people. That is caring about other people. That is prioritizing other people as well as myself. We live in a society, or we were in a society where it's just me, 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 me. I just think about myself. I don't care about anybody else. I don't give a damn what happens to anybody else. As long as I'm okay, as long as I get what I want, I don't care what happens to anybody else. I have no consideration for other people. But what I think that this pandemic has really taught us is that I have to think about other people, because the health of other people is directly going to be jeopardized or connected or protected by my actions. So if I do something, it's directly going to affect another person, whether that person is living in my home, or that person is somebody who I'm interacting with, or I go to see, so on, whatever it might be. So this is something that really is very, very important, I think, and something that really important for people to reflect on, that it's not just about protecting yourself, it's about protecting other people, those people who are much more vulnerable and much more susceptible to get this virus than you.
Thank you, Imam Zafar. I really appreciate that. And while Imam had pointed out about taking care of your neighbor as yourself, more or less loving your neighbor as yourself, you need to look at the guidelines that is set before you, so that you'll be able to adhere to them, and then social distance, washing your hands, and wearing the mask wherever you are. Very, very important. And if you're watching us, this is the Inspirational Talk Show, iTalks, and my guest tonight is Imam Sayed Zafar Abbas from the Birmingham community, and I'm so privileged to have you. Yes, stick and stay. We'll be right back, and then we'll continue in other segments. Welcome right back to the Inspirational Talk Show, iTalks, and my guest tonight is Imam Zafar Abbas from the Birmingham community, and we're so particularly grateful to have you, sir, to join us. Now, sir, so university tuition fees be reduced and student recompense for private accommodation costs?
I think it's a really difficult time for everyone in this particular due to this pandemic, and I think it all comes back to just like what we said before the break, about thinking about other people, you know. So at this time, there has been a big, a big effect on everybody in society. People who are working, people who are business owners, people who are self-employed, students, even people who are not working. You know, just the fact that you have to stay at home and you can't go anywhere it has a big effect on your physical, your mental health, all kinds of things. So it really is a time to empathize, to think about other people. Now, students obviously they pay a lot of money to get their education. They uh, obviously then have to pay money for their accommodation, for living out. It's a big investment that they do in their future. No doubt, it will benefit them in the future. But at that time, upfront, it's a big, investment that they have to do. So in this case, if we believe as a society, we believe students are our investment in the future, in our future, in the future of our country, future of our society, then I think it's something that really there should be some kind of agreement that the universities, the landlords, the students have to try and come to. There has to be some kind of agreement that they need to come, because of course in this scenario it's nobody's fault, right? The virus is not, and the virus does not discriminate. It doesn't discriminate against anyone. Yes, those who are less fortunate, they have been affected disproportionately. There's no doubt. If you are uh, from a fortunate part of society, if you've got a roof over your head, if you don't have no issues paying the bills, of course you are inconvenienced, but you still be able to survive. There's people who are not being able to survive because they lost their job, because they have no support from the government, because they're not able to pay the bills, right? So in this scenario, yes, they have still been affected disproportionately, but the virus itself doesn't discriminate. It doesn't see whether somebody's rich or poor, student, young, old, so on and so forth. It will go to whoever, you know, it wants to go to. So therefore, this is something that really the university students and landlords, they have to come together to, and of course the government has been, and we have to give credit where the credit is due. The government really, compared to other countries around the world, have really stepped up. They have provided the support to employers, to workers, to employees, to self-employed. All this support has been provided to the businesses to compensate them for their loss that they've experienced during this
But it
time.
hasn't reached the students who rent
Of course,
private
exactly,
accommodation.
exactly. So that means that landlords need to show some compassion. I think is very important. That's very, very important. Like we said earlier, that this is a time, this pandemic has made us realize that we cannot go on with the idea that I am my person. I only think about myself and I don't think about anybody else.
Hmm.
I think that that's something that's really, really key, that this has pandemic has told us, that my actions, my inaction, my decisions are directly related and directly impacting other people's lives. So really, I have to think about that as well. That landlords and students and universities really need to play the role here to say that these are our students. They've been affected by this. So there needs to be some kind of way where the landlords are, maybe a reduced rent, for example. Obviously students, if they're not living there, they're not utilizing their properties in the same way as they would have been if they were, obviously living there, so on and so forth. But there has to be some kind of agreement that needs to be reached, so that you meet people halfway. You know,
That's right.
a
Yeah.
lot of a lot of landlords have reduced their rents. Um, they've given discounts or waived the rents for a few months, especially during the times of lockdown where less is being used because the property is not being occupied, for example. So these arrangements need to they need to come to some kind of range. I certainly think that students are our investment in the future. We have to think of that as the bigger picture, and not just as, I didn't get this much rent in this month, so I've experienced a loss. Yes, but this person who's student is not living there, and they're having to pay for something that they're not even able to travel to or live to, because the government restrictions are there that you cannot travel, you cannot go, you know. So and the classes are taking place online. So of course, university themselves, resources, less of them are being used. So they need to come to some kind of agreement to
Mhm.
try and compensate the loss that students would go through.
Right. So let's talk a little bit more about your community,
Mhm.
and delve into some specific issues relating the Islamic faith.
Yeah.
And do you how have you organized, your community for prayers and stuff like that in the lockdown? And then also, if the restrictions would have to be stretched past the festival period, how does that interfere with the whole organization and the structure of, the plan that is already in place? Because this is a very big festival, I mean, worldwide.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's been very difficult. Last year, the month of Ramadan, the Eids, Muharram, these are really important dates in the Islamic calendar, and the spirit of all of these dates is for people to come together and to commemorate and celebrate them together. So of course that's been very heavily impacted because last year Ramadan was in lockdown, you know. So and of course the spirit of the month of Ramadan is to come together at the time of sunset to have the breakfast meal together, right?
Mm,
So, for example, in normal circumstances, we would have in excess of 400, 500 people every single day coming to the mosque in the month of Ramadan. We would have a program, short program, start 1 hour before sunset. We would have some recitation of Quran, a short lecture, some prayers, and then we have the sunset prayer, and then we have the meal together, and that would attract 400, 500 people daily. Obviously last year we were not able to, we were in lockdown, we were not able to come together at all, so we shifted the program online, right? So we had the lectures and the prayers online. Of course, congregational prayers, which are the daily 5 daily prayers, they obviously cannot be done online, they have to be done in person. So we could not have that. Yes, individual prayer, is permissible for a person to pray their prayers at home. Okay. And so people pray their prayers at home, but we miss that spirit of bringing the community together. That togetherness, the fact that you come together, you share a meal, you talk, you have that human interaction. That was really missed. Yes, we did a whole month, 30 days. We had a program every day. I used to give a lecture. We used to discuss a daily topic, so on and so forth. But
and then you
it's
do and then you do all these things online, isn't it?
yeah. So we did. We did.
And so
Yeah.
while this, question really fascinates me, is that, you know COVID has taught us to do quite a lot of things online. And we see in the religious world, large sums of money is being invested in auditoriums, for example, um, 10,000 seater, 50,000 plus seater mocks and all them lot and stuff like that. Now, if we could do this online where people could just tune in into their laptops and see somebody like we're doing right now, and then they could pray and stuff like that, could it be a turnaround for developing communities, to look at channeling those sums of money into other resources, like, for example, investing in the industrial revolution, and creating more jobs for people within those communities. And of course, you did say earlier that those communities have more vibrant and younger people coming up. And, you could see these people traveling along the coast, trying to get to where they feel like it's much better for them, you know. But it's all due to the lack there, or, the lack thereof of the things that would give them the basic necessities of life. Could that be a way where we could look at, or it's has to be the symbol of what actually it is, and we should just keep the status quo, or could we just shift the goalpost?
I think that it's a really fascinating question. It's something that I've been thinking about since March last year. That it's coming up to a year since we've been doing online stuff. There's a lot of things that really work online. There's lots of advantages. So now I can be in one place and I can do lectures to serve different communities and different time zones. Whilst I'm in one place, I can be in UK, I can serve lectures doing time zones in USA, time zones in, in Europe, in the Middle East, in India, Pakistan, Australia, even. So that's one thing that's a big advantage. That's allowed me to be able to serve people in different time zones without having to go on a plane, without having to go anywhere, without that additional expense. The other thing is that it's able to connect. So if you're having an online program like we're having right now, anybody from the world can join us to watch this program. We're not restricted by physical place. Where if we were having this conversation in a place, in a church or in a mosque, we would only be able to serve that place where we were having the conversation. But right now we can serve everyone. So that's obviously a big advantage. However, there is a really big issue and challenge when it comes to other aspects of the congregation. So like I said, congregational prayers can only be done in person in Islam. So therefore, even if it's online, we wouldn't be able to do congregational prayers, for example. The other big thing, of course, is that you can't share a meal online, right? If you're giving food to people, it has to be done in person. You have to go there physically in person. We did still, even then, during lockdown, even up to now, we are still, from time to time, somebody sponsors the food at the mosque. They put it into containers. We have some very brilliant volunteers who come there, who cook the food. They put it into containers, and then we have a drive-in service. People come in, they collect their containers, and they go home. So even then, we still provided or went to some attempt to try and do that. But of course, it's not the same thing, And the other thing, of course, is that human touch. That when people actually physically meet each other, they actually make the effort to go and they come home, they have that physical touch of actually going there, coming back. That actually makes a big difference in terms of their spirituality as well. However, all of those challenges are there, no doubt. So for that reason, I don't think that even when the pandemic's over, we will still definitely want to go back to the old system of what we were like before. However, there are lots of advantages. One of those advantages is that, for example, there are lots of communities whose AV system and their online presence was not so great. Okay, due to the pandemic, they've been forced to up their game and make sure that they have an online presence as well, because otherwise you don't exist. If you have no online presence right now, especially, you have no existence. People don't know that you are there, you're doing anything is happening, right? So that's been one advantage. The other advantage, of course, has been that lots of smaller communities who maybe ordinarily were not able to host big speakers or be able to host programs of that scale are now not limited by space, right? Because they have no issue. You don't need to call anybody, anywhere. They're not even limited by resources or finances or all of these things. All you need is a Zoom account. You just send the link to everyone. You go online to Facebook or YouTube or whichever platform you want to go online to, and you say, whoever wants to join us can join us. And all of a sudden, a lot of smaller places who had limited resources and who had, limited things going on are right now leading the way in terms of, so I can speak for definitely the Muslim community as a whole,
Mm.
that a lot of smaller centers, smaller mosques, smaller organizations are leading the way on the online programs because they got the initiative that you pick out the best speakers, you pick out the best reciters, you call them on, send out the invites, make a good poster, send it out, and it's all about branding, it's all about marketing. If you brand
Right.
it well, if you make the advertising good, people will get attracted. Like, for example, like yourself, you made a poster, the poster is attractive, you put the background looks nice, you use the intro video, you put the video in between. These things are the little things that make a big difference. If there's a professional uh, setup, a professional output going on, people tune in, they see the video quality is good, the sound quality is good, they want to watch it. If they tune in and they see, oh, the video is fuzzy, the sound is not good, it's breaking up, they're gonna turn it off. They're gonna say, we don't understand, it's
Mm.
not benefit. But if
Let's
the video
let's
is good, the
yeah,
sound is good, they're gonna be like, we want to watch, we want to hear what they're saying.
yeah. Let's talk a little bit about at the moment what's going on in Syria, and quite you know devastating, really, the conditions where people live in, and what do you see happening, in these communities, and how, you know, is your community planning to help eradicate the situation? Because obviously there's these are communities where you have larger population in terms of the Islamic faith.
Yeah. So we are in touch with people on the ground in various parts, um, who are keeping us up to date with what's going on, what the situation is like. There's a lot of charities, both Muslim charities and obviously other charities who are working on the ground to provide relief to those people. Situation obviously is very complex. It's been going on for over 10 years now. Um, and there's obviously a lot of different countries are using it as a battleground for their own interests and their own objectives. So it is a very difficult situation. There are obviously mistakes being made by the government, and obviously there's a clear group who are trying to destabilize the country, um, and they are the forerunners to what is ISIS or ISIL, which started off obviously in Syria and then went to Iraq. They got eliminated from Iraq, but obviously their remnants are still there in Syria. So it's a complex situation which requires multiple kinds of support. Obviously, the immediate need is humanitarian aid and support for the people who are suffering as a consequence of what's happened.
How do you feel personally? I mean,
I
when
mean,
you see on TV news, the environment where people live in, and even the fact that the faith itself is more inclined to violence. How does it make you feel personally from your background? Because I believe that you grew up here in the UK, right?
yeah,
And then you had kind of, I mean, a different route to where you are now,
yeah.
and obviously, how does it make you feel?
I think that firstly, I think that is, any kind of suffering that takes place in any part of the world, that makes that makes me feel sad. Honestly, I feel aggrieved that why should any human being, whichever background, whichever country they come from, whichever color they happen to be, whichever religion they belong to, why should they suffer for something, uh, without any fault of their own? Okay, what it really is sad about the situation there is that if you look at, um, so I've got a lot of friends who come from Syria, and they tell me something that really breaks my heart. They say that, look, this was one of the best countries in the Middle East to live, to visit, to for tourism, for stability, for economy, all of these things, right? And they said almost overnight, over a few months, it went to being such a devastating place that it is right now. That people have to start leaving the country, fleeing, going to different countries, so on and so forth. It became a war zone, right? So I think number one, obviously, it makes me very sad. It makes me very pained, aggrieved. It makes me very angry that people act in this way. I think it also makes me aggrieved because, and sad and angry because those people are using the name of my faith as saying that they are acting in the name of the faith. When, as a religious leader of that faith, I have no association with any or any teaching that teaches that kind of behavior that is going on in Syria, right? In all of my years of studying and all of my years of all Muslims I've come across from all countries in the world, of course, there's one misconception that, for example, that Muslims only come from Arab countries. There's more Muslims in Africa than there are in the Arab world, right? So all the Muslims from all the backgrounds that I know, from whether it's East Asia to Middle East to Africa to any part of the world that I know, and all the Muslims and all the scholars and all the scholarship and all the books that I've read, that I don't recognize any of these things that are happening there to be justified in any kind of scholarship or any kind of text. So that's one. The other thing that makes me sad and actually makes me humbled is the fact that this was a country which was stable. It was one where people used to, um, you know, go for tourism. In fact, just to emphasize that point, so I was at university from 2005 to 2008. I was doing my degree, and then 2008 2009 I did a master's. At that time, so from 2005 to 2009, I remember at that time very clearly that those fellow students of mine who were doing Arabic as a degree,
mm,
they used to go to Damascus or their year abroad to as part of their degree, because that was the best, most stable. They had the best Arabic program. It was the best, most stable country. It was the lifestyle, the living was good. It was there was low crime. It was very safe. All of these things, right? Just to, I'm mentioning this to highlight the point that how the country was, and now how it's become. And I think it's very humbling that, that could happen to, God forbid, it could happen to any country, it could happen to any society. So we shouldn't be complacent and think that, oh, my life is fine, so I don't care about anybody else. So one of the reasons that this aggrieves me and pains me so much is also this, that it could happen to any country. Just because a country is okay today, or a country is fine right now, or is stable right now, doesn't mean it will not happen. It could not happen in the future. It could happen to any country, right? So therefore, we shouldn't be complacent. We should always be proactive, thinking and looking at and finding out that, avoid those things happening from before they happen, right? So that's one. The other thing, of course, is that it makes me aggrieved because, yes, there's a question that's come here on the Facebook page, that has politics got a hand in the violence? So I think definitely politics has got a hand in the violence. Like I said at the beginning, a lot of different countries have vested interests in that region, in that part of the world. They don't want stability there for their own interests,
Mm.
because by making that region unstable, it means that oil prices will stay high. It means that there will be intervention from different countries into that country. So therefore, it's beneficial for them for that country to remain unstable.
Thank you
But
very much,
yeah,
Imam
thank you,
Sayed Abbas, for coming on iTalks. Really appreciate that. I
thank you,
know there'll be a lot of opportunities that would arise for us to have a different scope of conversation growing
definitely.
up in the future. And I really appreciate the time that you've had with us. Thank you so much for coming on
Thank
iTalks.
thank you for having me, and I really enjoyed that and wonderful, and I hope that we can make some time in the future as well to come on. And I
Absolutely.
wish you all the best with your program, and I'm really impressed with your the setup and your program and everything. So thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much. God bless.
Yes.
Right, viewers, we have come to the end of another edition of iTalks here. Um, and we are particularly grateful to our guests for coming to share his expertise on matters that arise in our communities. And then particularly grateful to you out there for taking the moment to watch all the episodes that we have. Thank you so much for staying with us. And we believe that you're going to have a very blissful week, and we'll come your way with the Valentine's edition on Sunday next. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful, wonderful week. Thank you, and bye-bye.